Now osmosis, this is a very, again, if you don't get it this first time, just try to maybe reread the book or just review the slides. It's one of those things, like, I think there's a learning curve, but once you get past that learning curve, you're set. So this is where we have to refresh that membrane permeability part, right? So impermeable, nothing in or out. That's not your cells because they need to get things in and out of the cell, right? And freely permeable, anything can cross. So the thing is that your cells, they try to keep the insides of your cells, like they try to maintain that homeostasis. So the thing is that your cells they only allow what it needs in, and they only allow what it doesn't want out. So your cells, as long as something can cross, it's permeable. But if it doesn't allow everything to cross, it's selectively permeable or semi-permeable. So yeah, I use those two terms interchangeably. So pretty much, like, if it's anything in between not permeable and freely permeable, it's selectively permeable. So what osmosis is, basically you need a selectively permeable membrane. And osmosis, in terms of, I mean, in more exotic systems, they might refer to other solutions and solutes and solvents. But remember, our main solvent in the body is water. So osmosis is referring to the diffusion of water across a selectively permeable membrane. We're not talking about like artificial, other types of fancy chemistry here. We're talking about our cells and bodies. So osmosis, that is a requirement. Now here we have a membrane, a plasma membrane, and remember that, so we have plasma membrane by itself. The charged particles like ions, they can't cross the plasma membrane without additional facilitated diffusion. But the thing is that water molecules, they're small enough that they can actually squeeze between those phospholipids. So water molecules can freely cross the plasma membrane. But without the transporters, the sodium ions, due to their charge, they can't pass it. So some things can cross, but not all. This is why the plasma membrane is semi-permeable or selectively permeable. So what's happening here? Okay, so we have these two solutions. You notice that there are more sodium ions on this part, therefore there's a higher sodium concentration on the right of this diagram here. And there are fewer and less concentration of sodium ions on this side. But when you have osmosis, what happens? Well, water moves because, again, sodium cannot diffuse because it can't cross this plasma membrane by itself. So the water is going to move. And what we notice is that the water is now in an equal ratio on both sides. So we kind of have like a similar balance between the ratios of water to sodium. So that's what osmosis is. It's trying to balance out the concentrations of solutes on either side of a selectively permeable membrane, aka your cell membrane or plasma membrane. So things that solute concentration, this is the major factor that is behind osmosis. So it's due to some difference in the concentrations of solutes between both sides of a membrane. So then very, very general terms, like if you really want to get into the physics, you can read up about that. But equilibrium, when you hear this term, it refers to some sort of balance, and nature likes equilibrium. So what osmosis has to do with nature and equilibrium is that osmosis tries to balance out the concentrations of solutes across each side of a membrane. So things that with osmosis, what you also need is attraction between the solutes and water. And again, there is going to be attraction because in order for something to be hydrophilic, it needs some sort of electrical charge to attract water and vice versa. So that's what happens with osmosis, and this is why these solutes are able to contribute to osmosis. And again, why? Because, like, simple example with sodium chloride, sodium and ions have a positive charge, chloride ions have a negative charge, and the positive sodium is attracted to the negative oxygen or slightly negative oxygen atom in a water molecule, whereas chloride ions are going to be attracted by the slightly positive hydrogen atoms in a water molecule. Now with osmosis, what happens is that the water is going to be water and sodium are attracting each other, but where do you have more of the sodium and this charge? Well, you have more of this charge on this side and fewer of these charges here. So if water is allowed to move, what's going to happen? Well, water is going to be attracted by that higher concentration of all these electrical charges from sodium. Again, I'm showing you, in reality, your cells have many types of charged solutes and solutes on either side of the membrane, but I'm just showing you this simple version for simplicity's sake. So again, if the solutes can't move, like again, especially in ions with their positive or negative charge, they can't move freely across the plasma membrane because they have a hard time crossing that hydrophobic region. So if the solutes can't move, then water moves. So what happens, again, you have all this charge here, and sodium and water are attracted to each other. So this higher concentration is going to attract water, and it's also going to hold on to water on this side. So this is why you have the movement of water across a plasma membrane. So that's the difference between osmosis. So I like to use this little analogy whenever I'm explaining an osmosis. So say there's a bunch of people that are representing water molecules, and you have this two areas with different amounts of people. So then what do people like? And especially students, like regardless of undergrad, grad, or med students love snacks. And here on this room right here, we have a low concentration of sugary and salty snacks representing the solute concentration on one side. And then on this room, we have a high solute concentration, so a high amount of salts and sugars on this side. So we have an equal amount of students initially on both sides, but if we open doors that only allow the students through, where are they going to go eventually over time? Well, they can move between the rooms, but over time you will see that the students will go to the area with more snacks. Same with the water molecules. They will tend to migrate through osmosis toward the area of a membrane that has a higher concentration of solutes, including, well, not just salts and sugars, but those are classic examples of things that can accumulate on one side and draw water toward it. So I like to use, this is the way, at least it works in my head, that salts and sugars and solutes that attract water are going to draw it toward the side where there's more of these solutes than the area that has less solute concentration. So again, in osmosis, the key concept to know from that, this is due to differences, some sort of imbalance between the solutes on one side of a membrane versus the other, and the movement of water. So again, semi-permeability is important with that, because if it was freely permeable, what would happen? Well, those salts and sugars will distribute evenly, and it wouldn't really matter where the water is, because then these solutes, by distributing through the water, would just spread out by themselves. But our plasma membranes, again, water can pass through, but not all solutes can easily pass through the membrane. So what is water trying to do? Kind of keep things happy. So like in that example I had with like the people on the snacks, is that it tries to balance out the ratio of solutes or water and the solutes, just like we had that balance between the people and the snacks. So what happens is, in the previous example, is that we saw that water moves to the areas with higher solute concentrations, just like how those people who are representing water were moving to the areas with more of those sugary and salty snacks. Now, osmosis is a high to low, and you might be thinking like, wait, it's moving from a low solute concentration to a high solute concentration. Doesn't that kind of violate your whole high to low rule? Well, you can also flip it the other way around. You can think of it as osmosis is moving water from a high water concentration to a low water concentration. So this is why I say, like, for that high to low rule, that osmosis is a special case. Some people, they like the high water concentration to low water concentration explanation better than my snacks analogy. I'm for, do I want you to know the difference between those analogies and those concepts? They refer to the same overall movement. It's going to have the same result. Whichever sticks better in your brain, I'm for that one. So again, some people like the water explanation. I tend to use the solute difference explanation for osmosis. Yeah, this part right here, it says like semi-permeable membrane that only allows water through. Fluid. Yeah, so things that your cells have solutes. And not only do they have solutes, they have proteins, they have other things that can allow your cells to hold on to water. And the thing is that, yeah, so you have, I mean, even though in those simple examples I showed only one type of solute, your cells actually have many things, like not only just like ions and the proteins, but they also have many, yeah, what was it? How can I put more something? Yeah, so your cells also have ions that help to attract water, but especially your cells have a lot of proteins, and proteins tend to have charge that allow to retain water. How did people respond? So people responded this way. Let's expand this a bit. So because both solutions will gain. So which way will it go? Well, either way, so the people who said solution B will gain water are correct. And why is that? Well, if you're using the way I like to think about it, I like to think that there's more glucose in solution B. So there's more glucose, that's going to attract water and vice versa. So that's going to have the strongest tug that pulls water toward that side. Or you can think of that, in this case, there's more water on this side relative to glucose, less water relative to glucose on this side. If you like that high water concentration to low water concentration, it still moves the same area. So you're going to move from A to B. So next question. We have two solutions. One has a higher concentration, only 75 milliequivalents. So what we have is the same units of concentration, but we still have the same solute, right? Which has the higher concentration of solute? This side has the higher concentration, right? So most of you said solution B will gain water, so most of you are correct. Or another way I like to think of it, I like to think of the solutes like, or have you ever seen those like ads for those games where they have all these like little people and the side with more people win out? So that's the way I like to think of the solutes. The side with the more solutes wins out. So when it wins, or you can think of it like a tug of war. Who's going to win? A side of a tug of war that only has 75 people, or a side of a tug of war that has 150 people? And it's all the same solute, so it's going to one person is going to tug the same as another. The side with more draw is going to pull that side toward it, to have bigger strength and force, right? So this is why solution B gains water, because it has more solutes. Alright, so where will it go? So most of you said water, the solution B will go to the area, or solution B will gain water, and the solution A, which has pure water, will lose concentration. And most of you are correct. And why is that? Well, when you have a pure solution of water, what's the concentration of solutes? That means it has 0 solutes whatsoever. So which side is going to win out? The side that has more solute. So this has 154 millimolars of sodium chloride. This has 0 in A. So it's going to go, water is going to be attracted via osmosis to the side that has a higher concentration.